What up, Wizards? It's Dev. He of the accidental pork chop sideburns. I didn't mean for this to happen. But anyway, we have a bunch of Forgotten Realms spoilers. That's why you come. That's the reason that you came here. So should probably go ahead and get to those, because as usual, they've dumped a giant load of cards on us today that I probably need to get through. So let's go. So we'll start today with a whole bunch more of these venture into the dungeon things, just really briefly, because Wizards wanted to triple down on how easy it's going to be to venture in Limited specifically, because a lot of these look like Limited cards. You know, Chattering Skeletons is a 4-mana 4/3 that when it dies you venture. Planar Ally is a 5-mana 3/3 flyer. When it attacks you venture. Wandering Bard is a 4-mana 4/2, and it's got kind of a landfall trigger. At the end of your turn, if a land entered the battlefield under your control that turn, you venture into the dungeon. Veteran Labyrinth Explorer is a 4-mana 3/4, and whenever it enters the battlefield, you venture into the dungeon. We also saw Displacer Beast. Glad that this guy got a card. It's 3-mana 2 and a blue for a 3/2 cat beast, and when it ETBs, you venture into the dungeon, but you could also displace it. That's a 3 and a blue and return it to its owner's hand. So if you have enough mana, I guess you can venture a whole bunch of times in Limited, but as far as 3-mana venture things, I think Eccentric Apprentice looks pretty interesting. This is 3-mana 2 and a blue for a 2/2 flying tiefling wizard, and when it enters the battlefield, you venture into the dungeon. A lot of ETB venture triggers. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've completed a dungeon, up to one target creature becomes a bird with base power and toughness 1/1 and flying until end of turn. This, I kind of saved till the end of the venture into the dungeon uncommons and commons for this video, because I think this is really interesting. It's a Windrake, 3-mana 2/2 flyer. Those are pretty much always playable and limited, but this one has a really sweet ETB trigger. This is actually, I believe, a signpost uncommon for the venture deck. It's going to be really important in limited specifically. I think the other best venture card from today was Precipitous Drop. This is 3-mana, 2 and a black for an aura that enchants a creature, and when it ETBs, you venture into the dungeon. The enchanted creature gets -2/-2, but if you've completed a dungeon, it gets -5/-5. So I think this is super playable removal, even if you haven't ventured into a dungeon quite yet, or you haven't completed a dungeon. It's still -2/-2. That's going to take out most 2 and even some 3 drops in the limited environment, and you get a free venture trigger, and once you have completed a dungeon, it kills the creature that it didn't previously kill, right? It's been given some 5/5, -2/-2 for a few turns, and it finally finishes it off when you venture. So some cool stuff about this. You draw it late when you've already completed a dungeon. It's 3-mana for almost certainly remove that guy. So a lot of cool stuff about this, and to top it all off, it's a common, so a really relevant limited playable here. But that's not all. Wizards also doubled down today on another mechanic that mostly looks like it's for limited, but if you like rolling dice, this limited environment is going to be for you, because we saw a bunch of these roll a d20 cards today, and some cool payoffs for them that I'm actually kind of excited for. The payoffs don't look too bad in some of these cases, but as far as the roll a d20 cards, I'll start with Goblin Morningstar. I think it's one of the weaker ones, and I kind of like to work my way up, but Morningstar is one of my favorite medieval weapons, so good job on that. But it's 2-mana, 1 and a red for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has trample. You can equip it for 1 and a red, and when it enters the battlefield, you roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you create a 1/1 red goblin creature token, and on a 10 through 20, you create a 1/1 red goblin creature token and attach Morningstar to it. So that's not too bad, right? You get 2 mana for a 2/1 trample at that if you roll a 10 through 20. And you're more likely to roll a 10 through 20 than you are a 1 through 9. There's only 9 numbers in 1 through 9, where there are 11 numbers in 10 through 20. So, you know, it's not too shabby, actually, especially, again, in Limited, which I'll keep saying for the first half of this video. Sorry, non-Limited players, but I do think Limited is interesting to cover, and Goblin Morningstar is a cool little card that'll probably see some amount of play, you know, even if they kill the goblin that enters the battlefield with it. And a goblin always enters the battle. You will always get a creature off of this, which I think is at least somewhat relevant. Lightfoot Rogue. This is 2-mana, 1 and a black for a 2/1 halfling rogue with sneak attack. Whenever Lightfoot Rogue attacks, you roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, it gains death touch till end of turn. On a 10 through 19, it gets +1/+0 and gets death touch till end of turn. And on a 20, it gets +3/+0 and gains first strike and death touch until end of turn. So that's pretty cool. It's always going to be death touch, or at least on attacks, it's always going to be death touch for, you know, 2-mana 2/1. So that's not a terrible rate in and of itself. I don't think the creature types are super relevant. This doesn't see play in the Rogues deck or anything, but altogether it's a cool little package that probably won't see play anywhere outside of Limited, but it's a nice limited 2-drop. There's also Contact Other Plane. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an instant. Roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you draw 2. On a 10 through 19, you scry 2 and then draw 2 cards. And on a 20, you scry 3 and then draw 2 cards. I don't think this is better than Behold the Multiverse, which you'll probably see play over it until they both rotate out at the same time. So I don't think it's like amazing or anything, but I do think it's a pretty sweet little card that is going to be great for control decks and limited, but I just think there's better options in standard. There's also Scion of Stygia. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/1 Tiefling Shaman with Flash and Cone of Cold. There it is. When Scion of Stygia enters the battlefield, choose target creature an opponent controls and roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you tap the creature. On a 10 through 20, you tap the creature and it doesn't untap during the controller's next untap step. So this is a cool little card too, again, for limited and even for like budget constructed decks, but I'm not seeing it do too much in standard. I will say the Flash really helps me on this one. That's one of the things that makes me think it might see some sparing amount of budget standard play, or if there's like a mono blue tempo deck, maybe this again sees some amount of play, because it always taps the creature down at the beginning of your opponent's attack step before they've actually attacked, right before they go into combat more likely. But still, the Flash makes this look a little bit more playable to me, although certainly not an all-star. There's also Djinni Windseer. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for 3/3 Djinn with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you scry 1, 10 through 19, you scry 2, and on a 20, you scry 3. This is actually amazing and limited. For a common, you get Hill Giant stats with an evasive keyword ability, and you always get to at least scry 1 when it ETBs. Like, yeah, sign me up for some of these. This is a pretty solid limited, dude. It's also Swarming Goblins, 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 4/3 Goblin. When it ETBs, you roll that die, kid. It's 1 through 9, you create a 1/1 red Goblin creature token. On a 10 through 19, you get 2 of them tokens, and on a 20, you get 3 1/1 Goblins, which is pretty sweet. You get 4 bodies if you roll that 20, but even if you get a 10 through 19, you still get 3 bodies and 6 total power, which is good, but I think this is priced out of standard play. Even if there is a playable Goblins deck, this probably isn't the best thing in the world, honestly. But again, in limited, where it's a body in a box almost no matter what you roll, I do like this card. There's a bunch of these today. Arcane Investigator. This is a 2 mana, 2/1, 1 and a blue for an elf wizard. It has Search the Room. You pay 5 and a blue and you roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you draw a card, and on a 10 through 20, you look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library. So, it's okay, but 6 mana is so much. 6 mana is an unbelievable amount of mana, so I'm not really sure how great this is. I really don't. Even if you can anticipate when you roll a d20 and you do it at the end of your opponent's turn and all that, 6 mana is just too much. It's too much mana. Can we agree that that's a bit too much mana? So let's move on to Power of Persuasion. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for sorcery. Choose target creature an opponent controls and roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you return it to its owner's hand. On a 10 through 19, its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. On a 20, you gain control of it until the end of the next turn, which is pretty hype. Right? No matter what, this is at least somewhat decent, but again, it's sorcery speed. Sometimes I have to point out that a card is a sorcery because that tends to make cards that would otherwise be good really bad. And I think this is the case with this card. This being a sorcery probably bars it from any real standard play, especially while Brazen Borrowers in the format. And even after that, cards like Divide by Zero and a couple of other things are probably still going to be better choices because this is sorcery speed. So you can live the dream sometimes and, gank something for a turn, but even then I don't think it's worth the investment of putting this card into your deck when there's massive opportunity cost, considering there's way better cards than this. We also saw Hoarding Ogre. This is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 3/3 Ogre, and when it attacks, you roll a d20. On a 1 through 9, you get a treasure token. On a 10 through 19, you get 2 treasures, and on that critical, you get 3 treasure tokens. I like this guy. Again, Hill Giant stats, 4 mana, 3/3. It's a common. It'll always give you something, so long as it, survives to attack for that turn. And can attack, you probably don't want to attack into your opponent's 3/4 or 5/5 or whatever. But still, most of the time, this is going to get you some treasure. Sometimes it gets you 2 or even 3, and that's actually really sweet. Not standard playable. Again, none of these have been, but I do think this is a pretty cool little card in limited. But let's get into the rares and mythics and stuff that let you roll a d20, because some of these are cool. Delina, Wild Mage is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 3/2 legendary elf shaman, and when it attacks, you choose target creature you control and roll a d20. On a 1 through 14, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it has exile the creature at the end of combat. Know that you can copy Delina with this. On a 15 through 20, you create one of those tokens and roll again. So that's kind of actually really sweet. I wish this had haste or something to make it a little bit more playable. And yeah, I feel obligated to say it dies to Bone Crusher. I've gotten a couple of comments like, man, my opponent must be playing 20 Bone Crushers. It's like, no, it's just that if you get bodied once when you play your 4-drop and they hit it with a Bone Crusher at the end of your turn, they've gotten so much tempo on you that if it happens literally once in a game, you basically lost that game. And I think Delina is a case of that. This don't do much the turn it comes into play. It costs 4 mana for a poorly statted creature. So again, I think this is priced out and statted out of standard play, but it's a really sweet limited card. I keep saying that, but I think it's worth saying in a lot of ways, just because like this limited environment's going to be really, really fun. I like that. I like fun limited environments. Who doesn't? So I'm going to keep saying it. I think this looks really sweet and limited, and I want to play some of it. There's also Wizard's Spellbook, which I'm a little surprised is not mythic, but this is 7 mana. It's 5 and 2 blue for an artifact. You tap it and exile target instant or sorcery from a graveyard. Roll a d20, activate this only as a sorcery. 1 through 9, copy the card, you may cast the copy. Now, you still have to pay for it, by the way. On a 10 through 19, you copy the card, you may cast the copy by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. And on a 20, you copy each exiled card with Wizard's Spellbook, or each card exiled with it. You may cast any number of those copies without paying their mana cost. That actually seems pretty pushed, 7 mana is an awful lot for this. It is so much for this, but when you can just like get Alrund's Epiphanies and stuff, like that seems pretty good in this particular standard environment when we've got Genesis ultimatums, inspired ultimatums, just period ultimatums. It seems like a pretty sweet card to have access to. I mean, I think this is what I wanted Jadzi to be, and Jadzi wasn't, and it costs 1 less than Jadzi. It's harder to remove than Jadzi. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying this is standard playable because 7 mana is like so much. It's a ridiculous amount of manas. But at the same time, once you get this down and you get like a good turn in with it, it seems like pretty busted. And I want to go back one more time and just reiterate that this is a graveyard. You can play spells out of your opponent's graveyard too, and that's good. You untap with this in play and you have the mana. You paid 7 mana for this. You probably have the mana, even if you roll a 1 through 9 to cast whatever you copy. So this is probably quite good, and I can see this actually being like a really strong like late game win condition for certain decks. I like this card. But there's a mythic that rolls dice, and here it is, the deck of many things. Like, even if you're not a D&D player, and I've seen D&D players freaking out over the fact this card exists like all day, but even if you're not a D&D player, it's kind of nice. It's kind of cool to have the deck of many things. It's really sweet. But anyway, it's 5 mana. Function of the card. You pay 2 and tap it and roll a d20 and subtract the number of cards in your hand. If the result is 0 or less, you discard your hand. On a 1 through 9, you return a card at random from your graveyard to your hand, the 2 worst words in Magic in that sentence. On a 10 through 19, you draw 2 cards. And on a 20, you put a creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. When that creature dies, its owner loses the game. That's hilarious text. Even if you just draw 2 cards, it's pretty sweet for 2 mana, but it costs you 5 mana to cast the deck in the first place. So I think this might just be one of those like fun reference cards for D&D players. It's like probably at least somewhat decent Commander, at least sort of kind of okay in Commander. And any deck can play it, so that's kind of scary. I think, again, in EDH, this might be like the thing, but in Standard, I'm just not too sure about a thing that costs 5 mana, and then you have to pay 2 to activate it, so you don't even get to activate it the turn you play it most of the time. And then, like, sometimes it just gives you a random, like, land back from your graveyard. I don't know. I don't know about this one, all things considered. I hate the words at random. Even if you get to draw 2 cards off of it, it's like, wow, I paid 7 mana to draw 2 cards. Super good card here, guys. So I hate to burst anyone's bubble about the deck of many things. He's like super excited about this card's very existence in the first place. I'm kind of hype about it too. But card could be better, right? Can we agree on that? But we also saw a number of payoffs for rolling dice today, and this is what I'm actually kind of excited about. Things like Brazen Dwarf. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/3 Dwarf Shaman, and whenever you roll 1 or more dice, it deals a damage to each opponent. That's the kind of stuff that I like to see right there. Or Feywild Trickster. I'm actually kind of excited about this card for budget standard decks. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Gnome Warlock, and whenever you roll 1 or more dice, you create a a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. A 1/1 flyer whenever you roll a dice, that's good, right? Like, 3 mana is a lot to set that up. Don't get me wrong, and this can be Bone Crusher, all that stuff, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But, like, whenever you roll a dice, or die, get a 1/1 flyer is pretty good. That's pretty good. There's also the aptly named Critical Hit. This is 1 and a red for an instant. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn. But whenever you roll a natural 20, you return Critical Hit from your graveyard to your hand. Waka waka. A possibly recurable thing is good. Only problem is you have to put a bunch of cards in your deck that roll dice. I think that's no dice in Standard, but, you know, in Limited this might, like, really get hype in a game where you really need this back to get through for combat damage one last good time, or deal enough damage to finish the game off, and you happen to roll a natural 20 and every one of this card shop erupts. You know, like this, some of the cards in the set seem tailor-made to get a card shop as hype as a Smash Brothers tournament, and I can kind of appreciate that. There was also Pixie Guide, though. Not done with these payoffs. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 flying fairy. Not bad stats, actually, with grant and advantage. If you would roll 1 or more dice, instead, roll that mini dice +1 and ignore the lowest roll. That's really good in Limited. It's really good if you're trying to set up like a budget roll dice deck. You definitely want this thing. This is kind of broken in terms of rolling dice, you know. This makes all the things that roll, you know, that do good stuff on a 10 through 19 like way better, because you're like 60% or something like that to roll a 10 through 19. But I've played enough XCOM and other real-time strategy games in my life to know that 60% is a virtual miss most of the time. So it's really nice to have this guy out with like decent stats that can block 2/2 flyers. Like, not bad at all. Hard to kill. Bone Crusher can't kill it. That's worth saying in Standard. I don't know. I don't think that this like pushes a roll a dice deck into playability in Standard, but it's definitely a good enough payoff that you'll play it in every single deck that wants to roll a lot of dice. There was actually a third continuing theme today, though, and some of these include cards that I think are playable commons and uncommons and stuff. So I wanted to touch on this theme because I think it's a really neat one. The theme of paying for stuff with treasure tokens and getting extra value out of that, like Hired Hexblade. 1 and a black for a 2/2 elf warlock, and when it ETBs, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, you draw a card and you lose a life. So that's not bad. If you popped a treasure for this, then it's, you know, one of the cards that we've seen fairly recently, like the Vampire from Ixalan block that drew a card and lost a life when it came into play for 2 mana. Like, pretty solid, but this gets an extra point of power and toughness from that card. The only difference is you have to pay for it with a treasure token to get that bonus, and I actually really like that. I think this could possibly be Standard playable in the right deck, but I'm not sure how many black decks are making treasure tokens. That said, we'll see a card in a second that might shut my mouth here, so I'll hold it for a moment. Let's look at Jaded Sellsword first. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 4/3 Dragon Warrior, and when it ETBs, if mana from a treasure was spent to cast it, it gains first strike and haste until end of turn. So a little 4 mana, 4/3 first strike haste when you spend a treasure. Like, spending a treasure on these cards makes them constructed playable. Not spending a treasure on them makes them terrible. So I'm not sure that these end up seeing much Standard play, but at least this is in a color that we know makes a lot of treasures. And a 4 mana 4/3 first strike haste is actually not the worst rate in the world. It's not a great rate, but it's not the worst rate, especially after like Lovestruck Beast rotates. But my favorite of these cards, and one that I think could very easily be Standard playable, is Kalain Reclusive Painter. This is a black and a red, 2 mana for a 1/2 legendary human elf bard. And when it ETBs, you create a treasure token. So I think this might be playable no matter what the rest of the text on the card is. On a 2 mana guy that creates a treasure token, I've already said I like that. I'm like Prosperous Endkeeper. So. But continuing here, other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. So that's really, really sweet. Note that you can get multiple +1/+1 counters on stuff. This goes really well with like Goldspan Dragon, you know. You pop a treasure with Goldspan out, you get 2 mana from it. So if you play a Bone Crusher Giant or something with 2 of that mana and, you know, another red source, then you'll have a 6/5 Bone Crusher Giant. Like that's not even a hard line to get off. And honestly, you don't even have to have a Goldspan in play to make this halfway decent. You know, turn 1 you play like a Fervent Champion or some other 1-drop, and then but Fervent Champion works best. Turn 2 you play this guy and another Fervent Champion and swing for a lot. You kind of swing for a lot. What, 5? Yeah, I think you swing 5 on turn 2 in that situation, and you have a blocker up. So It's really not too bad at all, I'm telling you. Just 2 mana for a dude that creates a treasure token when it ETBs is fine enough, but just being able to play slightly overstated creatures, and this guy gives you the fuel to do that, I think is really, really good. I like this guy a lot, and I think it's actually one of the more standard playable cards of the day if you can get it to work. But let's bring it down for just a second to look at Gretchen Titchwillow here. It's a name. It's a green and a blue, 2 mana for a 0/4 legendary halfling druid. You can pay 2, a green and a blue, and draw a card, and you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Sweet. It's a pretty sweet little card here. It blocks for a few turns pretty efficiently. And then, ridiculously good mana sink. That you can use at instant speed at the end of your opponent's turn. This might actually be in some way standard playable, but I do think 4 mana is a lot for an activated ability. But the good news is that this can block for a lot of turns, and it's not an embarrassing investment for 2 mana. So in the right deck, this could definitely see some play. But let's bring it back up to the rare slot and get to some of the really good rares and mythics from today, or at least the stuff that I like. Let's look at Instrument of the Bards first. This is just a green mana for a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a harmony counter on Instrument. You can pay 3 and a green and tap it to search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to the number of counters on Instrument, reveal it, put it into your hand. If the card is legendary, create a treasure token and shuffle. I really like the treasure token mode on this, and I really like the sort of theme here that when bards attract legendaries, they get treasure tokens or extra value. You know, you get 3 life off the planeswalker when you search your library and get a legendary. So that's a cool little wrinkle in terms of like flavor and thematic elements. But again, the function of the card is what matters, and I'm pretty sure this is a bit too slow for standard, but this is just a single green mana. And getting it down on turn 1 in standard is probably okay, you know, whether you're in a control deck that only has a few creatures, silver bullets it needs to search up, or maybe you're in a green deck that has a ton of creatures in it, and once you do get into the late game, you start running out of gas, well, suddenly this goes and gets like questing beasts and Elder Gargaroths and stuff, so it could be better in standard than I think it is, just based on the fact that it's a 1 mana investment. Or maybe there's an Artifacts Matters deck with green in it, in which case this is one of the better 1-cost, you know, artifacts you have access to in standard. So gotta think about it from that element. But as far as Commander goes, I think that's where this really shines, especially if you get it down on turn 1 in Commander. Yeah, it's good. It's a good Magic card. But even if you have to wait until like turn 4 to play it, depending on how long that game of Commander goes, I still think this is decent. And especially in Commander decks, and standard decks for that matter, but in Commander decks whose most important creatures only cost a couple of mana, yeah, you're paying 4 mana to go and get a 2 mana guy, which feels bad, but it's probably not as bad as it seems a lot of the time because your deck can be completely built around important 2 mana creatures. So I think this is probably pretty decent and definitely Commander, and I don't think so standard, but again, if the right things fall into place, this could be playable. We also saw Orcus, Prince of Undeath, late last night. This is X and then 2 black and a red for a 5/3 legendary demon with flying and trample. When it enters the battlefield, you choose 1. Each other creature gets -X until end of turn, and you lose X life. Or return up to X target creature cards with total value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. I think this card is actually like very, very good. I'll take a flying giant body that doesn't die to its own ETB Wrath effect. Why does that not sound powerful to anybody else? That sounds very powerful. Like, there's a card that I want to compare this to that a lot of people are going to be like, dude, it's nothing like that card. But I feel like I want to compare this in a way to Hydroid Krasis, where this doesn't draw you cards and gain you life when it ETBs. In fact, it's kind of the opposite, right? Rather than affect your hand, this affects the board state. Rather than gain you life, it, you know, loses life. And I think that the loss of life here is something you do have to really watch out for. Sometimes you'll lock yourself out of being able to play this card for the first mode. And that's not great. But once you've locked yourself out of playing it on the first mode, the second mode becomes much better. Because if you're at like 3 life and you can't afford to use this as a wrath effect, well, then suddenly that means that, you know, you can just use it as like an Agadeem's Awakening and bring back a whole board presence, and that way you have a much better chance of surviving. Or you can just attack for alpha on that turn. You know, if your opponent has you on the ropes and they're likely to kill you with an attack next turn, that means they probably attacked you this turn, or at least, their last turn. Which means that this, hasty Agadeem's Awakening mode on the card can probably surprise a whole lot of opponents. There's just a lot of really good game states where this card can shine. And note that you can just cast, it's a 4-mana, 5/3 trample flying guy. You can, X can equal 0. And in a lot of game states, it's probably going to be pretty decent in that mode too. This actually has 3 modes on it when you think about it. So I like this. Whether it's a 5-power flyer for 4 mana that also tramples, which is worthy of note, or it's like a 6 mana kill all your X2s and under, and I get a body on the battlefield. Or it's just win the game right now because I have 8 mana and some dudes in my graveyard. Like, all of these modes are very good. So, and there's like a secret hidden mode on it where you get a bunch of cards back from the graveyard and you don't attack. You just have like a giant team up to block. So, it has a don't lose mode and an I win mode on it at the same time. Like, this card is good. What? This card is good. I'm going to go out on a limb. This card's good. But there's also Dragon's Disciple, the last cool uncommon, I think, that I want to look at today. This is 1 and a white for a 1/3 human monk, and as it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. If you do, or you control a dragon, Disciple enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. Dragons you control have Ward 1. That's a fine card too, right? If you reveal a dragon from your hand, it's a 2-mana 2/4, which is a really, really good rate. It'll block for you until you can start playing the dragons. When you play the dragons, they're harder to kill. A sweet card, We might not get a 2-drop dragon, but we got a cool 2-drop for the Dragon's deck. Only problem is it's white, and I'm not sure how much white the Dragon's deck wants to play, but Dragon's deck might be 5 colors. And if that's the case, then yeah, this is a really sweet little 2-drop that I like a lot. Well, I've just reloaded Mythic Spoiler, and we did get a new card since I started recording, so let's look at Minimus Containment here. This is probably an Oblivion Ring. It's 2 and a white for an enchantment that enchants a non-land permanent. Enchanted permanent is a treasure artifact with tap, sack this artifact. Add 1 mana of any color and loses all other abilities. Interesting. That is a really neat Oblivion Ring right there. You can put it on your own thing if you want to. And ramp. It's mono white ramp, everybody. That's kind of neat. If you want to look at it as mono white ramp, it is. And honestly, mono white ramp is a deck. Mono white Ugin is a real deck. I've already talked about it in the spoiler season. But yeah, neat. And you can just put it up, obviously, on your opponent's stuff. And yeah, they get some ramp, but it also permanently takes care of the thing, which Oblivion Ring doesn't do. So Banishing Light doesn't do. So I like this. This is a sweet card, and it's common too. So decent removal. I don't know. I like that. A little push-pull. You don't want to ramp your opponent, but you do want to get rid of that thing that kills you. So, yeah, that's cool. But here's another 3-mana white card that I think is one of the best cards of the day. We're down to the top 2 cards of the day. So let's look at Guardian of the Faith. Pretty pushed for standard, I think. This is 1 and 2 white for a 3/2 Spirit Knight with Flash and Vigilance. And when it ETBs, any number of other target creatures you control phase out. They're doing phasing. That's pretty neat. I thought that we'd only get 1 phasing card. It would be like the Teferi from Core Set, but no. Even when Teferi rotates, we'll still have phasing in the format. But it's a really sweet card. I like that it has the creature type Knight. Again, another cool Knight. For the last few months that Knights are in Standard, we get a little bit of them getting bolstered, which I think is sweet. You want this in your Knights deck, but it's also a flash 3/2 creature that can save 1 guy from removal or whatever. That seems pretty sweet. White has all these dope 3-mana creatures. I don't know how it fits all of them into their deck. Elite Spellbinder, Skyclave Apparition, this guy, I'm just not sure how mono white aggro does it. But maybe this is more of a sideboard piece against, removal, sweepers, and whatnot. But, even just any deck you play against is going to have single targeted removal. And even against solo removal, this is pretty sweet. The only problem is in aggro, you usually don't want to hold up 3 mana, especially when you have, Elite Spellbinder and Skyclave Apparition. You want to spend that 3 mana on your turn in aggro a lot of the time. So, again, a little bit awkward for some of these aggro decks, but I do think if you've sniffed out the Extinction Event or some other sweeper or whatever, this is probably one of the best cards that saves you from that. But now we come to what I believe is not only the best card of the day, but possibly the best card of the set so far for competitive Magic play, and that is Demilich. This is 4 blue mana, but you won't pay that for it most of the time. It's a 4/3 skeleton wizard, and it costs a blue less to cast for each instant and sorcery spell that you've cast this turn. Whenever Demilich attacks, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. Copy it. you may cast the copy. You may cast Demilich from your graveyard by exiling 4 instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard, in addition to paying its other costs, or not paying its other cost if you've already cast some spells that turn. Now, I understand that this looks like a lot of work, but what this actually does is just reward you for playing Magic. That's all it really does, you know? It sucks. The worst thing about this is that you can't, like, cast it at the end of your opponent's turn. If it had Flash, it would be a bit much. If you could cast, you know, opt into a removal spell, spend 2 mana on Demilich, whoops, like, that would be a bit much. But, you know, in blue decks and standard right now, you can still cast, you know, card draw spell, removal spell, 2 mana this guy. Or you can cast card draw spell, removal spell this guy for free. And note that, like, you can cast a red removal spell. You can cast a black removal spell. You can cast a red card draw spell, and still it reduces this thing's cost by a single blue. So there are decks that might mill this into their yard and then incidentally just be able to play it later. And then, note, a lot of people I think are just skipping over the triggered ability on this card. You know, when it attacks, you can just, whoops, cast the Alrund's Epiphany again. It's just, it's a silly card. You know, there's a lot of decks in the format that will mill cards into their own graveyard, or again, just by incidentally playing Magic, put a lot of spells in their graveyard. So it shouldn't be too hard to just cast this from your yard, even if you have to pay 4 blue mana for it. You know, like on a spell where you don't cast a whole lot of, you know, or a turn where you don't cast a whole lot of spells, or maybe you draw dead for the turn, but you have 4 blue mana. Well, this basically has escape, kind of, you know, you just exile specifically instant and sorceries and just get it back. So we have a form of escape once escape leaves the format. That's interesting. So I don't know, man. I like this card kind of a lot. Again, it just rewards you for playing Magic. It's a recursive threat with a pretty decent stat line, honestly. You know, 4 power is nothing to sneeze at. It's easy to play, you know. It's easy to play for cheap. Even if you don't play it for cheap, there are turns where you just pay the full cost for it to play it out of your yard. This is just a fantastic looking Magic card to me in possibly multiple formats, especially formats that can sling spells really fast, you know. I know Modern doesn't have like Gitaxian Probe anymore, and if they did, this card would look a whole lot more dangerous, but even in, you know, Modern and Legacy and stuff, you are slinging spells quick, my dude. Either way, I do think this is a very, very strong Magic card. And it's also the last card of the day. We are sort of rounding home on this set. I just want to take a look at how many cards there are actually revealed so far. 188 out of 281, less than 100 cards to go. And I think they might just preview them all tomorrow. Spoiler season is supposed to last until the 2nd, which would be tomorrow, which would be, you know, Thursday, so, or Friday, rather. It'd be Friday. Content creation. This week has really put me behind, man. I don't know that I've actually slept yet since Monday, so don't mind me. But anyway, I think that I'm pretty sure the set will be done in the next day or two. So stay tuned to the channel. We got at least one more spoiler video, if not multiple spoiler videos, because I might do a best of the rest. Top 10 sleepers after that, top 25 cards in the set, deck techs after that, playing some Magic on Twitch with these cards. So, you know, follow me over there if you want to at this address. You can support the channel on Patreon there for $1 a month and vote on what decks we do first in the Dungeons and Dragons standard season, so that's nice. Or you can follow me on Twitter there. So do those things and like the video, you know, do all that stuff. Do like, subscribe, you know, more Magic. We all need that in our lives. Don't we all need some more Magic in our lives? So that should be my tagline for the channel. But anyway, subscribe if you haven't done it yet. And hit the bell for the notifications. But get down there in the comments, because that's what I'm really interested in this time. Like, am I too excited about Orcus, that Rakdos Legend? Is he not as good as I want him to be? Am I too excited about Demilich? I've seen mostly people say that card is busted today, but I have seen some dissenting voices. So let me know if you think Demilich is not actually very good at all, in fact, and you might be the smartest person in the room. So let me know how you felt about all the analyses today, and I will catch you cats later. I got to get this thing edited and out before midnight. So I love you all, and I'll see you next time. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love. Be kind.